Well, if you have a family member with Alzheimer's disease, you have probably thought about it and worried about it. The idea that they could just wander away, it happens all too often, and just recently right here in our own backyard. This morning we have Tracey Kendall Wilson, the Northeast Tennessee Area Director for Alzheimer's Tennessee, here with us to tell us what we can do to protect our loved ones. And Tracey, good to have you back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Well, what are some of the signs that a loved one might be? I mean, are there things that we can be watching for that could make them a little bit more prone?
Yes, there actually are. And of course, this isn't to say that it can 100% reduce our risks, but look for increased anxiety. If they start pacing and wandering around the house, that might be a pretty good indicator that at some point in time they're going to attempt to wander out the door. If they start talking about wanting to go home and needing to go home and that feeling of going home, that might be a pretty good indicator. They start talking about needing to go to work or some type of past activity they used to do. All of those things can be indicators that at some point in time in the very near future there might be a trip outside in their mind scheduled.
Because for me, if I had a family member that was going through this, that would be one of my biggest fears. And you said it happens.
Most definitely. About 60% of individuals diagnosed with Alzheimer's disease, and then of course some of the other types of dementia, which there are 70, will attempt to wander at some point in time, whether by foot, by car, and things of that nature. So some of those things can be pretty big indicators. But then there are also some things that we can learn about how people with dementia tend to wander, where they tend to wander to, and then of course some things that we can do to safeguard our surroundings.
Okay, so let's talk about things we can do to be proactive. How can we sort of safeguard our surroundings?
Well, some of them are going to seem a little out there. So I know a lot of people think, oh, I don't really know if I can do that. But I think one of the easiest things to do would be to install some alarms. You can pick them up really cheap from a couple of local retailers that will give a very loud, resounding sound anytime the door is open. Okay. Now you can disarm those during times that we're all in the same room together and we know that there's not a propensity for wandering. Even walking away to the kitchen, walking away to the bathroom, sometimes these folks can be very quick. Okay. So we need to make sure that we're not totally letting our guard down, but that type of thing. Someone asked recently about what if the other person in the home is hearing impaired. They actually make a couple of alarms that will, when the door is opened, it will still make the sound, but then there will also be a flashing light that will indicate that the person has opened the door. I think trying to camouflage doors as much as possible, so making it not quite as appealing to want to go out. Also installing locks maybe out of reach, and then checking with fire marshals and folks of that nature. You do actually have a right to secure your dwelling that you own in any way that you need to. So, and that can go to some pretty far things as using different types of latches and some bolts and things of that nature. So,
okay, to protect them, because then we know too if they do wander, you really need to report that immediately. I think a lot of people think we've got to wait 24 hours. That is not the case in this type of a situation.
Not at all. In fact, several years ago, we were successful in passing silver alert legislation in the state of Tennessee. Now it's up to each county how they operate that, and that's something that we're going to probably revisit this legislative year, especially in light of some of the things that have happened recently. However, it is important because typically they'll be found about a mile and a half away from home. They tend to wander, and I know this sounds crazy, but they tend to wander in the direction of their dominant hand. So if someone is left-handed, then they're probably going to make more left turns. If they're right-handed, then they're going to make more right turns. Wow. Areas that we look at and we think, well, someone wouldn't go through there, maybe because of water, because of extreme brush or hazardous materials. Someone whose brain is not fully functional doesn't see that danger. So, they may go through the creek that's, well, maybe a little bit higher than a creek, maybe 3 or 4 feet to get across to a different area. So we definitely have to think outside the box. Brushy areas and water typically are something that they're drawn to. And then of course, past living areas. Okay. So if they've been from, if they've come here from another state, that may be something to consider. I know several years ago we had a gentleman make it all the way to Michigan.
Oh, wow.
So yeah.
Wanting to go home. All right, well, certainly a wealth of information, Tracey. Thank you so much.
you.
You've got a great website with more. If you would like to access that, you can always check it out. Lots of information there as well. Thank you.
Thank you.